Revenge with Kayla. Floor 42 smelled like lemon polish and recycled air. The mahogany table looked calm. The people around it weren't. I had 15 years in rooms where silence cost millions. Today's stake was a 9-figure renewal with a key man clause. My deck was the map, term sheet, risk grid, the client's triggers. Then the door snapped. Cassidy walked in with an MBA smile and my slides. She didn't glance at me. She plugged in, claimed the story, and started talking. I didn't stop her. I just took notes. People hear presentation and think it's slides and a laser pointer. In my world, a deck is a contract wearing makeup. I wasn't in that room because I'm loud, or young, or photogenic. I was there because I'm the person who remembers what everyone conveniently forgets, who promised what, when, and under which section of the term sheet it can be enforced. 15 years will do that to you. You stop chasing titles and start collecting access. Not the kind you badge scan. The kind you earn when a general counsel says, "Loop her in," and the email thread changes color. My job title on paper was harmless. Strategic Operations, Integration-led. Whatever euphemism HR liked that quarter. In practice, I was the hinge. Deals swing on hinges, not headlines. The client across from us wasn't buying our product. They were buying our reliability. And reliability isn't the smile in the room. It's the risk register nobody wants to read. It's due diligence questions answered before they're asked. It's knowing the one thing that will make a billionaire go quiet. This renewal was 9 figures and tied to a key man clause that made everyone nervous. One executive walked, the pricing reset. One misstatement in the meeting, the counsel on their side would start drafting a termination letter before the coffee cooled. So I built the deck like a war map. Every slide had a purpose. Every number had a source. Every claim had a backup in the data room, labeled, time-stamped, and ready for an auditor with a bad mood. I also built something else, silence. The kind that happens right before signatures. The kind you can feel in your teeth. Because the truth is, clients don't trust companies. They trust patterns. They trust the person in the corner who doesn't talk until it matters, and then speaks in clauses. Our CEO loved to play hero, but he didn't know the difference between EBITDA and a decent bluff. Our sales director could charm a priest into buying a nightclub, but he'd crumble the minute legal asked for a citation. They needed someone who could translate ambition into something enforceable. That was me. The week before that meeting, I lived on iced coffee and version control. I wrote the talking points that made executives sound like they'd read the memo. I sat with finance until midnight and made them prove every margin assumption. I had outside counsel on speed dial and internal counsel on a leash. When someone tried to simplify a risk, I highlighted it in red and said, no. When someone asked, "Do we really need that appendix?" I answered, literally, yes. I kept the keys to the kingdom in boring places. A shared drive with the wrong name. A leather folder that looked like nothing. A spreadsheet so ugly nobody touched it. And, more importantly, relationships that didn't show up on org charts. I'd sat across from this client's counsel in New York at midnight. I'd watched their CFO's face when a vendor tried to hide a carve-out. I'd learned which questions were tests and which ones were traps. So when Cassidy walked in like an invasion, carrying my work like it was her birthright, it didn't just insult me. It threatened the entire structure holding that deal upright. And the room knew it. They just didn't know how to say it without starting a fire they couldn't put out. I wasn't the face on the pitch. I was the hand on the switch, the one who kept the lights on. That's why they asked me to lead it. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. because executives believe early mornings make them look disciplined. The client team arrived at 8:52, perfectly dressed, perfectly polite, and perfectly armed with questions they'd been saving for months. Their lead negotiator, Dana, set her notebook on the table like a judge setting down a gavel. 2 associates opened laptops. Their counsel placed a slim folder in front of him and didn't touch it again. That was the tell. He didn't need notes. He needed leverage. Our side did the usual corporate theater. The CEO smiled too wide. Sales poured water like we weren't all dying of caffeine. Legal tried to look invisible while still somehow taking up an entire chair. And me? I sat 3 seats off center, my tablet angled toward the door, deck queued, backups loaded, the data room open in a hidden tab. My work was a loaded weapon. All it needed was the right hand. I clicked the first slide. A clean title. A quiet promise. Then the door opened again. Cassidy walked in like the room belonged to her and everyone else was just renting oxygen. No apology for being late. No, sorry to interrupt. Just a bright, aggressive smile that didn't reach her eyes, and a laptop tucked under her arm like a trophy. She stopped behind my chair for half a second. Long enough for me to see the blue sticker on her laptop lid. My blue sticker. The one I used so IT would stop swapping my machine. She leaned forward, close enough that I caught her perfume, something floral, expensive, and trying too hard. Then she reached past me and tapped the HDMI cable. "I'll take it from here," she said, loud enough that the client heard, but sweet enough that it sounded like a favor. Our CEO chuckled, a small, relieved sound, like a man handing off a problem he didn't understand. I looked at him. He didn't look back. Cassidy slid into the seat at the head of the table as if it had been waiting for her all morning. She didn't ask. She didn't check. She just sat. The screen flickered. My title slide reappeared. Only now there was a different name on the bottom. Hers. In the same spot where mine had been 10 minutes ago. There are moments in corporate life where time slows down, and you realize exactly how disposable your effort is. Not your job, your effort. Your late nights. Your precision. Your invisible labor. This was one of those moments. Dana's eyes flicked from the screen to me. A micro-expression. Not sympathy. Recognition. Like she'd just watched someone pick up another person's purse and walk out of a cafe. Cassidy launched in without taking a breath. "So, to start," she said, clicking to the next slide, "we've identified 3 primary value streams that will justify the renewed pricing structure while mitigating risk exposure." It was my sentence. My phrasing. My rhythm. She said it like she'd written it between spin class and brunch. I watched the client counsel's pen stop moving. Cassidy kept going. First, operational continuity. Second, compliance assurance. And third, strategic alignment. She glanced at Dana like she was expecting applause. Dana didn't blink. Our sales director nodded enthusiastically, the way people nod when they're hoping confidence will substitute for comprehension. The CEO leaned back, hands folded, pleased with himself. Legal stared at the table. No one said, "Actually." No one said my name. No one did the smallest human thing and acknowledged that a theft had just occurred in front of 12 witnesses. Cassidy clicked through my slides like she was scrolling through someone else's photo album. On the 4th slide, she mispronounced the client's subsidiary. On the 5th, she skipped an entire section labeled Keyman Clause Implications. I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. Not panic. Not anger. Clarity. Dana raised a hand. Cassidy smiled brightly, the way a substitute teacher smiles right before they lose control of the classroom. "Yes, absolutely." "Great question." Dana's voice was calm. "Which assumption did you use for churn sensitivity in your second scenario? The one tied to the renewal opt-out window." It wasn't a gotcha. It was a normal question. The kind a person asks when they've read the deck, understood it, and wants to confirm the speaker knows what the numbers mean. Cassidy blinked once. Just once. But it was enough. She looked at the screen. Then down at her laptop. Then back at Dana. "Well," she said, drawing the word out, "we're obviously using industry-standard benchmarks. So." Dana's associate tilted her head slightly. Counsel's eyes shifted, sharp now. I watched our CEO's smile falter at the edges. Cassidy laughed. A tiny, brittle sound. "Of course, I can have my team send you the model after this call." It wasn't an answer. It was a dodge. Dana nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, like she'd just confirmed what she needed to confirm. And then she did something that made my stomach go still. She turned her gaze away from Cassidy and landed it on me. Not openly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet pivot of attention, the way clients do when they've decided who the adult in the room is. Cassidy didn't notice. She kept talking. She kept reading my work off the wall like it was karaoke. And the whole time, my name sat erased at the bottom of every slide, replaced by hers. She didn't even change the font. There are a dozen ways you can react when someone steals your work in public. You can interrupt. You can correct them. You can do that tight little laugh and say, "Actually, I built this." You can make it awkward on purpose, so everyone remembers you had to make it awkward. I didn't do any of those. No. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't even shift in my chair like a victim begging to be noticed. I watched. Because here's the thing nobody tells you when you work around power. The room doesn't reward truth. It rewards momentum. And Cassidy had momentum. A confident smile, a stolen deck, and a leadership team that loved anything that let them stay comfortable. If I called her out right then, my CEO would have done what executives always do when two women clash in a boardroom. He would have tried to manage the emotion. He would have turned theft into miscommunication. He would have asked me to take it offline. And the client? The client would have gotten a front row seat to our dysfunction. They would have watched us cannibalize each other and quietly decided we weren't stable enough to trust with 9 figures. So I did the only thing that actually protects a deal. I let her talk. Outside, I was calm. Inside, I was measuring. I watched Dana's eyes. I watched counsel's pen. I watched the associates stop typing when Cassidy dodged. Every time she said we, I watched who flinched. Cassidy thought she was presenting. She was test driving a stolen suit in front of the tailor who stitched it. My hands stayed folded on the table, but my mind was moving through a checklist like a lawyer reading a contract out loud. Where will she stumble? Which slide will expose her? How long until she hits the section that requires context, not confidence? Because stolen work is like stolen jewelry. It looks impressive until someone asks where it came from. I opened my notes app, not to rage text a friend, not to draft a complaint, to document timestamps, exact phrases, every dodge, every mispronunciation, every moment she spoke past a question instead of answering it. Click. Note. Click. Note. I didn't write paragraphs, just bullets, clean, sharp, the kind you can attach to an email later without sounding hysterical. Dana asked her another question. A normal one. Again. Cassidy answered with fluff. Again. And the room did what rooms like that always do. Nobody confronted her. Nobody defended me. They just looked away, like silence could rinse guilt off their hands. That's when I felt it the shift. Not in Cassidy. In the client. Dana wasn't angry. She wasn't amused. She was collecting information. Clients don't explode in meetings. They observe, then they punish with procurement. So I stayed perfectly still and let the observation happen. Because the longer Cassidy performed, the more evidence she created. And evidence is better than outrage. I glanced at the clock in the corner of the screen. 9:17. In 43 minutes, we would hit the slide labeled Model Assumptions. The one you can't wing. The one that ties directly to the opt-out window and the keyman clause. Cassidy didn't know that. She hadn't built the map. She was just walking across it. I tapped one more note into my phone. Let client ask. Do not save her. Then I set the phone face down again. I didn't interrupt. I scheduled the countdown. The best part about letting a thief drive your car is you get to watch exactly where they crash. The meeting ended the way corporate meetings always end. Fake gratitude, forced smiles, and a calendar invite called Next Steps that everyone pretends is progress. Dana shook hands. Counsel nodded once. Cassidy beamed like she'd just invented math. I packed my tablet slowly. Not because I was stunned, because I was listening. In the hallway outside the boardroom, our sales director caught up to Cassidy. Great job, he said, too loud. Really strong narrative. Cassidy laughed. I mean, it's what I do, she said, flipping her hair like confidence was a deliverable. I walked past them without looking. No eye contact. No confrontation. Just the quiet sound of my heels on polished stone. By the time I reached my office, my phone was already vibrating. 1 missed call. Then 2. Then 3. Unknown number. Private number. And then finally a name that mattered. Legal Ops. I didn't pick up. Not yet. I set my bag down. I closed my door. I took out my notebook, my real one, the one with shorthand that looks like a foreign language to people who only speak PowerPoint. Then the emails started. Subject, quick question, churn sensitivity model. CC, sales, legal, finance, Cassidy. I stared at the CC line for a full second. Cassidy had put herself on everything like a child wearing her parents' badge. The body of the email was polite. Too polite. That's how you know someone is furious. Hi team. Thanks again for today. Can you confirm which baseline churn rate was used in scenario 2 and provide the source for the uplift assumption tied to the opt-out window? No greeting to Cassidy by name. No great presentation. Just a request for the one thing Cassidy couldn't steal, understanding. I watched the reply thread form like a bruise. Cassidy responded first, of course. She responded within 4 minutes, because she thought speed could replace accuracy. Hi Dana, great question. We used industry standard benchmarks and can share the full model shortly. Industry standard. Benchmarks. Shortly. Translation: I have no idea. 2 minutes later, finance replied. Not to Dana. Too internal. Can someone clarify what churn assumption was presented? The model I have is different. Legal replied right after. Also internal. Different how? The version in the data room is V12. Cassidy, which deck did you present? Cassidy didn't respond. You could practically hear her typing and deleting. Then my phone lit up again. New voicemail. I let it sit there like a bomb on a table. Another email. Subject: follow-up, Keyman Clause language. CC: General Counsel. Outside Counsel CEO Cassidy. That was not normal. You don't loop outside counsel unless you're either finalizing something big or documenting something ugly. The body was even shorter this time. Counsel wants to ensure the language discussed aligns with the clause in Exhibit D. Can you confirm who is designated as the key person and what happens if they are reassigned? Cassidy had skipped that slide. I watched her do it. Our CEO replied with a single line. Cassidy, please handle. And for the first time all day, I smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was inevitable. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was our chief counsel directly. I picked up on the third ring. Her voice was low, controlled. The voice of someone who has seen careers die in conference rooms. Did you build the renewal deck? She asked. I looked at the glass wall of my office. At the reflection of my face, calm, composed, almost bored. Yes, I said. A pause. And did Cassidy present it as hers? Another pause, longer this time, like she was choosing which words would survive discovery. Okay, she said finally. Don't send anything. Don't reply to anyone. Forward me every version you have, time-stamped. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask what she knew. I already knew what was happening. The glass was cracking. Not loudly, not dramatically, just hairline cracks, spreading under pressure, while everyone kept pretending it was fine. People always assume leverage looks like a smoking gun. A recording. A screenshot. A forwarded email with gotcha, highlighted in yellow. That's cute. Real leverage is quieter. It's knowing exactly who the client is when they're not performing for the room. It's knowing what they value, what they fear, and what question will make them stop smiling. Cassidy didn't have that. Cassidy had slides. I had history. 3 years earlier, before our CEO started wearing sneakers, with suits and calling it modern leadership, our company was in trouble. Not the dramatic kind. The slow, humiliating kind. Margins shrinking. Churn creeping. The kind of decline nobody tweets about because it isn't sexy. That's when Dana first showed up in my life. Not in a boardroom. In a crisis call at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday, with a vendor breach that could have turned into a public nightmare. Her voice was flat. Precise. No theatrics. We're not here to punish you, she said. We're here to see if you're competent. I liked her immediately. Our executives were panicking. Sales wanted to promise refunds. PR wanted to spin. Legal wanted to hide behind language so vague it could be wallpaper. I didn't do any of that. I pulled the logs. I mapped the exposure. I wrote a timeline so clean you could hand it to a regulator without flinching. I called our outside counsel and made them answer in plain English. Then I called Dana back and said, here's what happened. Here's what didn't happen. Here's what we're doing in the next 12 hours. There was a pause on the line. A long one. Then she asked me a question no one in my company had asked. Do you sleep? I smiled into the darkness of my office. Not during incidents, I said. That night, we contained it. Not because we were lucky, because we were honest, and fast, and specific. Afterward, Dana sent a short email. No emojis. No compliments. Appreciate the clarity. Keep me looped. Keep me looped. That's corporate for, I've chosen my person. Over the next year, we worked through 2 renewals and 1 renegotiation that could have ended with us getting replaced. Every time, Dana ignored the loudest voice in the room and found the calm one. She found me. Not because we were friends. Because she knew what I was. Predictable competence. Dana came from a world where trust is built in increments and destroyed in a sentence. She didn't care about charisma. She cared about whether you answered the question she asked, not the question you wished she'd asked. And Cassidy's entire personality was answering questions she wished existed. She didn't know Dana's patterns. She didn't know Dana never asked a curious question. Dana asked test questions. Quiet traps dressed up as conversation. Cassidy also didn't know the small things, like how Dana always glanced at counsel before she pushed on a clause, like how she stopped taking notes when she'd made a decision, like how she used the word okay when she meant I'm documenting this for later. In that boardroom, Cassidy saw a client, a target, a scoreboard. I saw Dana, the same woman who'd watched me navigate chaos without lying, the same woman who'd said keep me looped and meant it. So when my chief counsel told me to send time-stamped versions, I didn't feel nervous. I felt aligned, because the truth was simple. Cassidy could steal my slides. She could steal my wording. She could even steal my seat at the table for an hour. But she could never steal what I'd built with the people across from us. They didn't trust her to talk. They trusted me to ask the right questions. By that afternoon, everyone wanted me to do the obvious thing. Forward the email thread to HR. Attach my drafts. Highlight Cassidy's name in red like I was grading a child's homework. That's what corporate revenge looks like in amateur hands. A paper trail and a tantrum. But I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to end a career. And careers don't end because someone steals credit. They end because someone gets exposed as a liability. Evidence makes people defensive. Situations make people honest. So I didn't build a case. I built a room. My chief counsel called me back at 2:06. Her tone had shifted from controlled to surgical. We're scheduling a follow-up with the client, she said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. They want clarity. Tomorrow, a clean deadline. A ticking sound you can hear if you've ever watched a deal bleed out. Cassidy will be on the call, she added, like it pained her to say it. Of course she would. Thieves don't leave the stage willingly. They have to be dragged off by consequences. I looked at my notes. At the time stamps. At the keyman clause questions Cassidy couldn't answer. And then I did something that would have looked insane to anyone who still thinks revenge is loud. I removed myself from the middle. No angry email. No confrontation. No, actually, I created this. I sent one short message to counsel. Let Dana lead. I will answer only if asked. That was it. Because Dana's questions were cleaner than any accusation I could make. And Dana didn't ask questions to be polite. She asked questions to find failure points. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing like it was trial. Not by gathering proof, by mapping the traps. The client had 3 pain points: churn sensitivity, opt-out timing, keyman risk. Cassidy could fake confidence on a slide, but she couldn't fake causal logic. She couldn't fake why a number mattered. She couldn't fake the consequence of a clause she didn't understand. So I built the nuclear option out of the smallest possible weapon. One question. Not a gotcha, screaming for attention. A question that sounded normal. A question that any competent leader should be able to answer without blinking. The kind of question where the wrong answer doesn't just embarrass you. It rewrites your credibility in real time. I wrote it down on a yellow legal pad. Old school. Because some things deserve ink. Then I refined it the way you refine a blade. Too specific, and Cassidy could dodge. Too broad, and she could monologue her way out. It had to be precise enough to demand substance, and simple enough that silence would look like incompetence. I checked the client's language. Dana always framed accountability as curiosity. She'd say, help me understand, right before she destroyed you. So I built it to fit her mouth. I also built my own restraint. If Cassidy floundered, my instinct would be to rescue the deal, to jump in, to translate, to save everyone from discomfort. That instinct is why people like Cassidy survive. They rely on professionals being professional. Not tomorrow. I opened the deck one more time. Scrolled to the slide Cassidy had skipped, the one with the assumptions that held the entire pricing argument together. Then I closed my laptop. Outside my office, the floor hummed with normalcy. People laughing in the kitchen. Someone microwaving salmon like they didn't fear God. A junior analyst walking past with a latte, unaware that reputations were about to combust. I glanced at the clock. 4:48 p.m. In less than 20 hours, Cassidy would be back on a screen with Dana. And Dana would do what she always did. She would ask a simple question, and the answer would decide who belonged in the room. At 9:58 the next morning, the conference room felt different. Same mahogany, same recycled air, same executives pretending they weren't sweating. But now there was a new object on the table: urgency. Legal sat closer to the speakerphone than usual. Our CEO had that tight smile he saves for regulators and angry investors. Cassidy arrived early, 10 minutes early, which told me she'd been up all night trying to memorize a model she didn't understand. She wore a white blazer that still had the crease lines from the hanger. Freshly printed confidence. She placed a notebook in front of her. Empty. Just a prop. I sat where I always sat, 3 seats off center. Tablet closed. Hands folded. A neutral face that said I was here to observe, not compete. The phone in the middle of the table blinked. 10. Dana's voice came through clean and calm, like she was calling from a room where nobody ever panics. Thanks for making the time, she said. We want to close this quickly. We just need clarity. Quickly. That word is a blade. Cassidy leaned forward. Absolutely, she said bright. We're aligned on that. Dana didn't acknowledge her. Not directly. She spoke to the room. And we appreciate the deck. The structure was helpful. A beat. We have 1 open item. 1. That's how you know it's not one, Dana continued. Before we finalize pricing, I want to confirm the logic behind the churn sensitivity tied to the opt-out window. Cassidy nodded too fast. Yes, of course. Dana's tone stayed polite. Help me understand this, she said, and I almost smiled, because here it was. The language. The trap dressed as curiosity. In scenario 2, you assumed a 1.8% churn decrease following the renewal. What operational change is driving that decrease? And where is that commitment reflected contractually or in your implementation plan? Silence. Not long. Just long enough. Cassidy's eyes flicked to the ceiling, like the answer might be hiding in the light fixtures. Then she said, Right. So, that's based on, industry standard retention improvements when you have a more stable partnership. Dana cut in gently. I'm not asking about industry standards, she said. I'm asking about your plan. What are you doing differently to make churn go down? Cassidy smiled again. A little sharper this time. Well, we have a number of initiatives, she said. Enhanced support, improved onboarding, a stronger customer success cadence. Dana's associate spoke up. Is that in the SOW? Cassidy blinked. It's implied in the relationship, she said. Counsel's voice, dry as paper, slipped in through the speaker. Implied is not a contract. Cassidy laughed like it was a joke. Of course, she said, but we can formalize. Dana didn't let her finish. Okay, she said softly. That okay wasn't agreement. It was a timestamp. Dana kept going. So, to be clear, there's no contractual commitment currently that supports the churn decrease assumption. Cassidy's face tightened. Well, we, my team, can add language, she said quickly. We can adjust the term sheet. Our CEO shifted in his chair. Legal's pen started moving. Dana's voice stayed calm. I appreciate that, she said. But that means the churn decrease is hypothetical, which means the pricing justification tied to it is optimistic. Cassidy inhaled and tried to recover. The broader value streams still justify the pricing, she said, louder now. The strategic alignment, the compliance assurance. Dana paused. Then she asked the question I'd written on my yellow pad. Cassidy, she said, and this was the first time she used her name on the call. It landed like a judge reading a sentence. Did you build the churn model you presented in yesterday's meeting? The room went completely still. Cassidy's smile froze. Excuse me? She said, a little too sharp. Dana's tone didn't change. I'm asking because when we challenged the assumption yesterday, the responses were vague. And today, you can't identify the operational driver or the contract reference. So I'm trying to understand whether you own the model, or whether we need to speak with the person who does. Cassidy looked around the room like someone searching for an exit sign. Our CEO stared at the speakerphone. Legal stared at Cassidy. Sales stared at the table, praying to whatever God protects commissions. Cassidy swallowed. I lead the work stream, she said. I oversee. Dana cut in again, softly. That's not what I asked. Another beat of silence. Cassidy's cheeks flushed. Then she did what weak people do when they're cornered by a clean question. She tried to weaponize indignation. I find that question inappropriate, she said, voice rising. We're a team. We collaborate. The deck represents the company. Dana's counsel spoke this time. Collaboration is not misrepresentation, he said. If you did not build the model, we need to know who did, because we can't rely on an assumption no one can defend. Cassidy's eyes flicked to me. Just once. A fast, desperate glance. And in that glance was the whole truth. She knew I had the answer. She knew I could save her. She knew she'd stolen my work, and now needed me to validate the theft so she didn't drown. I didn't move. I didn't look away either. I met her eyes with the calm of someone watching a bridge collapse, exactly where the blueprint said it would. Dana's voice returned. Still polite. Still lethal. Should we bring her onto the call? Dana asked. The person who built it. Cassidy opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Our CEO finally spoke, clearing his throat like a coward, trying to sound like a leader. Dana, he said, we can have the integration lead join. Dana's response was immediate. Great, she said, because until we speak with her, we're pausing the renewal. The word pausing hit the room like a dropped glass. Cassidy turned toward the CEO, panic now bleeding through the polish. I can handle it, she hissed under her breath, not muted enough. Dana's counsel spoke one last time. For the record, he said, we expect accurate attribution of work product moving forward. It affects our trust. For the record, that phrase isn't dramatic. It's deadly. The call ended. The speakerphone went dark, and the room did that thing rooms do after a public execution. No one moves. No one breathes too loudly. Cassidy stared at her empty notebook like it had betrayed her. I stood, quietly, and picked up my tablet. Then I said the only thing I needed to say. Which version do you want, counsel? After the call, nobody spoke for a full 10 seconds. Not because they were processing a moral lesson, because they were calculating cost. Our CEO finally exhaled and said the most cowardly sentence in corporate history. Let's regroup. Cassidy moved first. She snapped her notebook shut like it contained evidence and stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. The sound was sharp. Embarrassing. Perfect. I can fix this, she said, already halfway to the door. I'll call Dana directly. Legal didn't even look up. You will not, our chief counsel said, quiet enough that it felt like a blade sliding out of a sheath. Cassidy froze. The CEO tried to rescue the moment, because that's what he does when his favorites get caught. Let's not overreact, he said, hands raised like we were in a hostage situation. We can clarify attribution internally and… Chief counsel cut him off. Dana asked on the record who built the model, she said. Our outside counsel heard it. Their counsel heard it. If we mishandle this, it's not just an HR issue, it's a credibility issue. Credibility. The word hung in the air like smoke. Cassidy's face was stiff, but her eyes were moving, searching for an angle. A scapegoat. A loophole. She found me. Of course she did. This is ridiculous, she said, voice shaking with rehearsed outrage. We're a team. She's trying to divide us. I presented company work. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Chief counsel turned to me. Send me V12 in the version history, she said. I nodded once. Already packaged, I said. Cassidy's jaw tightened, because she knew what version history meant. It meant timestamps, edit logs, names. It meant reality, documented. By noon, the fallout had moved out of the boardroom and into the places where careers actually die. HR didn't call a meeting titled Investigation. They called a meeting titled Touch Base. Cassidy got invited, then uninvited, then re-invited with legal, added to the calendar invite like a warning label. Her Slack went quiet. No more quick question. No more all caps as soon as possible. No more cheerful thumbs-up reactions on other people's work. Just silence. At 2:17, an email hit my inbox from procurement on the client side. Subject: Renewal Timeline Adjustment. 2 sentences. They were pausing the renewal pending clarification on staffing and accountability. They wanted a revised implementation plan. They wanted the key man clause language tightened. They wanted names. The CEO forwarded it to a dozen people with a single line. Urgent. Cassidy didn't get copied. That's when she started to understand what she'd lost. Not the spotlight, the access. By 4, security quietly collected a spare badge from her desk. Not dramatically. Just a laminated rectangle disappearing into a pocket. By 4:30, IT sent a standard notice. Access changes scheduled. And by 5:12, an all-hands email went out about process improvements and reinforcing standards of integrity. No names. No accountability. Just corporate incense to cover the smell of burning. Cassidy's name vanished from the org chart within a week. Not with a bang, with a link that stopped working. People asked me in whispers what happened. I gave them the only answer that mattered. She couldn't answer a question she claimed to own. And the building went back to its normal hum. Emails. meetings, coffee. But the air was different. Because everyone had seen it. The quiet consequence. The kind you don't recover from. 2 weeks later, I was back in the same room. Same lemon polish. Same air that never quite felt fresh. Same mahogany that made everyone think they were important. But the seat at the head of the table was empty. Not because leadership suddenly developed humility. Because legal had decided the next renewal would be led by the person with continuity. That was their polite way of saying, the person who won't embarrass us again. Dana came in on speaker like she always did, calm, precise, not interested in anyone's ego. We walked through the revised model. We tightened the keyman clause until it could cut glass. We rewrote the opt-out language in plain English, the way you do when you don't plan to lie. And when Dana asked a question this time, I answered it. Directly. With citations. With sources. With the kind of certainty that makes counsel relax their shoulders. At the end, Dana said, "Appreciate the clarity." And I heard something rare in her voice. Trust. After the call, our CEO tried to salvage his self-image. He stood by the window, hands in pockets, staring out at the city like it owed him applause. "Good work," he said, without turning around. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. It was the closest thing he was capable of. I didn't need more, because I didn't take my slides back. I took my position back. Cassidy's desk was already occupied by someone new. Someone quieter. Someone who didn't wear ambition like perfume. Her name stopped coming up. Not in meetings. Not in gossip. Not even as a cautionary tale. In corporate America, that's the real death. Not being hated. Being forgotten. And the funny part? If she'd just asked for help, I would have given it. If she'd credited the work, I would have protected her. But she wanted the spotlight without the responsibility. So I gave her what she earned. If you've ever had someone steal your work and smile while they do it, remember this. You don't have to scream. You don't have to beg. You don't even have to fight in the moment. Sometimes the cleanest revenge is a single question asked by the right person in the right room. Thanks for watching. Hit follow. Hit subscribe. Whatever makes your algorithm feel loved. And if your coworker ever borrows your presentation, let them. Just make sure the client knows who to ask when the numbers start bleeding.